Hello! We already went into detail about the three eons in the past video. So we had the Archean, Proterozoic, and the Phanerozoic eon. Now we will be talking in detail about the Phanerozoic eon. Okay, so let's highlight that Phanerozoic eon. So the Phanerozoic eon is made up of three eras. We have the Paleozoic era, the Mesozoic era, and the Cenozoic era. Okay, so we will be going through the Paleozoic era in this video. So, as you can notice, the Paleozoic era is made up of periods. You have the Cambrian period, the Ordovician period, the Silurian, Devonian. The Carboniferous used to be one period, but now they've been divided into two, the Mississippian and Pennsylvanian, and the Permian. So the way I memorize this is cos D, okay, CP, but you can replace the C with MPP. It's up to you. So Cambrian, Ordovician, Silurian, Devonian, Mississippian, Pennsylvanian, and Permian. So cos D, MPP if you want. Okay, so let's go through the Paleozoic. So the Paleozoic, so this is still under the Phanerozoic eon, okay, and it's divided into the three. Paleozoic, so derived from the Greek ancient life, begins with the oldest period, the Cambrian. So as we said, cos the MPP. So Cambrian is the first. So the Cambrian is very important and is an amazing time actually, because this period lasted about 53 million years and marked a dramatic burst of evolutionary changes in life on Earth known as the Cambrian Explosion. So suddenly, in the normal bacteria and cyanobacteria that we had in our planet, life suddenly started to become more complicated and they covered our oceans. That's why it was called the Cambrian Explosion, because life pretty much exploded within our oceans. So this on average, the number of species represented by the fossils increases from the Cambrian period onward. So several life forms rose during the Cambrian, and that was a very exciting event because from being multi-celled or single-celled organisms, then you have these organisms now with bones, teeth, and shells that can be recovered from our fossils. So that's a very important period in the Paleozoic era. Okay, so the Mesozoic means middle life and then the Cenozoic means new life, but we'll cover this in a separate video. Okay, so going back, the Cambrian period is the first geologic time period of the Paleozoic era. Among the animals that evolved during this period were the chordates, animals with a dorsal nerve cord, hard-bodied brachiopods, which resembled clams, and arthropods, ancestors of spiders, insects, and crustaceans. So the end of the Cambrian, spoiler alert, is marked by evidence in the fossil record of a mass extinction event about 490 million years ago. Okay, so the Cambrian period is very interesting because life started to differentiate. You had single-celled organisms, but now you have multi-celled organisms, and they had structure because they evolved vertebrates. So basically, the one that you have right now have like a blueprint from the Cambrian period. So you have organisms with shells, with vertebrates. So the dorsal nerve cord, dorsal means back. So it's a medical term or a scientific term for back. Nerve cord. So basically a spinal cord, the primitive spinal cord. You have organisms already with spinal cord. So with the formation of the spinal cord, this allowed more movement and more structure in the organisms, allowing them to move further into the oceans. So from organisms, simple-celled organisms which just drift into the environment with very little means of movement, you have now organisms, fishes, primitive fishes with dorsal nerve cords. Okay, so primitive life on land also first appeared in the Cambrian period, but plants did not invade until 60 million years later in the Silurian period. So because the organisms have now structure, they can now walk technically on land. So a representative species which could do that in the past is the Tiktaalik, represented by with Tiktaalik, which is also called the walking fish. So this shares characteristics of both fish and amphibian. So the Tiktaalik fossil was found in the northern territories of Canada in 2006 with amphibian-like neck and head, including ears that could hear in the air, and fish-like scales and fins. So during the Cambrian period, this is quite a tricky time because, as I have mentioned, life exploded. So life was everywhere in the ocean. So with life being everywhere in the ocean, there comes competition. So you have to compete for food. So meaning organisms have to evolve ways how they could be better than the other organisms. So that pushed evolution of other species. In addition, since it's getting quite crowded in the oceans, organisms started to expand into land so that they could get away from predators. So because life has exploded in the oceans, it triggered several events which led to speciation, or like the evolution of species. Okay, so again, because life was so prolific, you have to evolve, you have to adapt, they have to survive, and that led to the formation of bones, of shells, teeth, and then also the movement from water to land. Okay, so let's look at the different periods in the Paleozoic era. So when we say Precambrian, that's not a period. It's just a general term for anything that has happened before the Cambrian. So Precambrian. Okay, so that includes 4.6 billion years ago, or 4,000 million years ago, up until the 542 million years ago. So everything before the Cambrian is Precambrian. So we have soft-bodied organisms present, and they are dominated by single-celled life form capable of photosynthesis. But by the Cambrian, here you have organisms with hard skeletons. So trilobites are one of the first organisms which were able to inculcate minerals into their bodies and create shells. So they left a lot of fossils in the seafloor. Okay, so the Cambrian was followed by the Ordovician, okay, abundant marine life, followed by the Silurian. So here, fishes with jaws started to appear. So there were fishes before the Silurian, but they don't have jaws. They're like worms, basically. Worms with like a dorsal nerve cord that just swims in the ocean. But here, fish started to have jaws. Okay? And then plants also started to occupy the land. Although during the Cambrian and the Ordovician, there were already attempts of organisms like animals occupying land. But plants didn't enter land itself until the Silurian period. Okay, so by Devonian, this is called the age of the fishes. Okay, so this is the formal formation of fishes. You have jaws, you have gills, you have fins with the vertebrate. Okay, so formal fishes, our fishes came from the Devonian period. Then the first land vertebrate animals occupied the land. So before the Devonian, there were some amphibians. So amphibians that could live in the water, but they mostly stayed in water. They just stayed in land briefly, but that was not their major habitat. But in Devonian, organisms started to occupy the land as their formal habitat. In addition, during the Devonian, the land plants that had entered during the Silurian started to grow and develop. So you have seed plants, trees, and forests now, and insects are started to occupy the land in the Devonian. Okay, then we have your Mississippian. During the Mississippian, you have shallow tropical oceans. Okay, then marine fossils in limestone are also common. Pennsylvanian, Okay, insects and early reptiles have developed during the Pennsylvanian, and then you have your first evergreen trees. So the trees which make up our fossil fuels, if you can recall, so fossil fuels or the coal is from trees, and those are trees from the Carboniferous period, or specifically the Pennsylvanian period. So they were ancient trees, although they weren't alive now. No Pennsylvanian species of trees exist, they still help us in the form of the fossil fuels. Okay, and then finally, the last period is the Permian. So much marine life was wiped out in the most massive mass extinction known at the end of the Permian period. So you may be thinking about the extinction period. When you think about extinction period, comes to mind is the dinosaurs. So the dinosaurs was wiped out by an asteroid hitting our planet, which we will talk about later. But a bigger and more drastic extinction event happened in the Permian. So recall that life exploded in the Cambrian, but 95% of those organisms died after the Permian event. So the Permian extinction, a very detailed paper. If you want to look for this paper, this is open access. You can search this in Google Scholar and you will find it readily. So how to kill almost all life, the end Permian extinction event. So in this paper, it details that there were several volcanic eruptions. So the volcanic eruptions in Siberia caused an increase in temperature. So the extinction model involves global warming by 68 degrees. So because of that, carbon the gas carbon dioxide have occupied most of the atmosphere, and that even led to a greenhouse effect. So because of the drastic increase in the planet's temperature, the organisms died out. So the biggest mass extinction here, loss of 95% of all species on Earth. So it's quite if you want to connect this in the present situation, because global warming triggered the biggest mass extinction in our history. And hopefully we're not doing the same thing in the current state of our planet. But during the Permian event, again, this was not caused by human beings, of course, because this was way back. This was caused by several volcanic eruptions in Siberia. So because of large volcanic eruptions that released carbon dioxide into our atmosphere, it created a greenhouse event, and organisms did not survive the increase in temperature. Okay, so you will see that there is a specific layer. So you have Cambrian, Ordovician, Silurian, Devonian, Mississippian, Pennsylvanian, and then Permian. You have this period where there are so many dead organisms. And again, that is because they couldn't handle the global warming event that happened by the end of the Permian. So because of the drastic change in the environment and the death of most of the organisms, scientists call this like an end of an era. So after the Permian extinction, we have now moved toward the Mesozoic era. Okay, so let's stop there for now, and then we'll open the Mesozoic era in the next video.